But everyone, the long-awaited tutorial is finally here. I will be crocheting along with you this beautiful goose. You can stuff the head if you're adding little eyes, so you'll need eyes. Otherwise they poke through, so you just need a little bit of stuffing in the head. Or if you don't have eyes, we can embroider some together. There's option of adding furry wings. I can show you how to do that. For the most part, the only part that's stuffed is the head and the body. This is not stuffed with anything, or the wings, or the little tail. What you will need is some yarn. This is a self-striping yarn. You can do color coordinated however you like. I have some chenille yarn and some furry yarn for the wings, and I'm going to try to make some kind of design with these three. The yarns are BBB Adorable from Hobby Lobby, and this is Mint Charm. This one is called Lullaby Lane, and this one is Sugar Plum, and they're all the same brand, BBB Adorable. The fur yarn is Soft Pink, also by Yarn Bee, for the moment. And you will need shears, a stitch marker, stuffing, and I will be using a 5.5 millimeter hook size, and a darn needle for sewing. So you can design however you like. I will be changing colors throughout to show you how to do that. We'll start with the Sugar Plum color. Alright, let's begin. Grab the yarn, the dead end tail in your hand, the working tail, just toss it on the side, and get my hook. Yarn over a couple of your fingers and make an X. I secure the yarn between my fingers and pull up a loop and chain one. If you want, pull out the tail if it makes it easy. It does make it easy for me. And I cinch it a little bit closed because later it'll be a little difficult to cinch this type of yarn. And I'm going to insert the hook in the magic circle and put my hook over the yarn and pull it in through. I've got 2 loops on my hook, and I'm going to yarn over the hook and pull it through, and that's my very first single crochet. To make it easy to find that first stitch, I'm going to put a stitch marker in it. Also, a good tip, if you have a hard time inserting your hook when the yarn is finer, if you put a stitch marker in there, it'll stretch it out a bit. And now let's repeat that 4 times total, so 3 more times. Hold your tail and half of the circle between your fingers and insert again. Hook the yarn over the top and through. Just try to relax your hands, not to pull too tightly. And then yarn over the hook and pull through 2 loops. And that's 2. 2 more to go. Insert in the circle. Grab the yarn with the hook. Pull through 2 loops. And yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. That's 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1 more. Yarn over, pull through. That's 4 of them. And now we cinch the circle if it'll allow. Not too hard because this yarn will snap. Okay, I cinched it as tight as it'll go. And now I'm going to insert my hook right next to the stitch marker. Right through. And remove the stitch marker. and yarn over and pull through. I've got 2 loops. Yarn over and pull through those 2 loops, and that begins the very first stitch of our next row. So instead of going through both loops, as you can see there's 2 here, I'm only gonna pull the front one up. I find it easier to just hook it here and doesn't stretch the stitches too much with standard crochet, but I know chenille yarn is a little different. You do what works for you though. And that's our first stitch, and we're going to do 1 single crochet and 1 increase. That was my 1 single crochet, and now I'm going to count 2, 3, 4. So this one's worked, and this is the second one, and you can feel it where there's a softer spot. That's the stitch you go into, and then there's like a bump. That's the knot between the stitches. So you try to insert in the second, and the hook should slide in pretty easily. If you're forcing it in, then it's definitely not the right spot. And we're going to increase in this one. Yarn over. That is 1, and right next to it we're going to insert the hook again. Grab a yarn, pull through, and pull those 2 loops, and that's 1, 2, 3. And now we're gonna find the next space. So if I'm counting, there's 1, 2, it's right here. So it's, be careful not to go right next to it, and it's stretched out a bit all the way down here. And I'm gonna find it by trying to wiggle my way in. There it is. Pull up a loop, and that's 1 single crochet. And then we have 1 more increase here at the end. Not losing my stitch marker. 1 more increase here. Pull up a loop. Insert again in the same spot. Pull up another loop. This is where I pinch and try to cinch again. Very gently. It will snap. So be careful. Now, let's find this stitch where I have the stitch marker, and pull up a loop, remove the stitch marker, yarn over and pull through. That's our first stitch of the next row. We've got 2 single crochets and then an increase. So that's 1, and the next stitch, that's number 2, and the next stitch is the increase. That's 2 and 1. That's 1 and 2. We'll go a little bit faster. Hopefully by now you figured out just basic crochet, single crochet. That's 1. The next stitch is 2, and the last stitch is the increase. Now in the last row you should have had 6, and now with the second increase row it should be 8. So let's count to make sure. You can tell by little bumps. So this little bump is 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the last one with the stitch is 8. So that's perfect. Some of these will not add up in even numbers, so I apologize for that. Now, I removed the stitch marker this time. You can do that if you like, but once you get used to finding the stitches, it'll be a little easier. We got 1 single crochet in there. Put the stitch marker back. We're going to do 1 single crochet increase. Now with the second one's increase, 2 and 1, 1 single crochet. The next one is increase again, 2 and 1, and single crochet. You should have 12 here. Two, 1 single crochet, and 2. We will change colors here, but let me just count with you real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 is the one with the stitch marker. So we've got the beak. This is a time where you could change color if you'd like as well. Kind of to look like this or like this one. Or you could continue for the whole head and change colors at the neck. So I will change here. To change color, the very last stitch I'm going to undo. You can undo part way just like how I did, and there's 2 loops here. Or if that's a little confusing, I'll undo the whole stitch. So basically I've got half of an increase, and the second increase I'm going to pull up a loop, and normally I would yarn over and pull through, but this time I'm going to pull through with a different color. So I'm going to use this one here, the Lullaby Lane. I'm holding the tail and I'm adding the working yarn on the hook, and I'm going to just finish the stitch like normal. Now I am keeping them pretty nice and snug back here, otherwise it'll just come out. So it's very important to keep the tails tight back there. And I'm also going to tug on these tails too, all of them basically. All right, just so you know. Then I'm going to work my very first stitch here where the stitch marker is. That's my working tail. And I'm going to yarn over and pull a loop. And so the very first stitch of this round is in a different color. I'm going to pull it up to, okay. I'm going to put a stitch marker back in there. Now I'm going to pull this a little tight, not too tight, just enough to where it doesn't bubble up over here when it's too loose. And this is a good time to leave this yarn just in case you're going to do it maybe in stripes or change colors around the neck, and it'll be just way easier if you keep this tail. And you can always cut it if you don't use it, but don't cut it prematurely. It's just easier for you not to have to sew on too much yarn. And okay, I'm tugging on this beak tip to form the beak and make sure that it doesn't unravel. And I'm going to sew quickly this yarn, just a couple of loops to just secure it, using a darn needle. I'm going to just pull up a couple of loops, just random, whatever you can easily. Don't struggle too hard if you can't. So that's a couple of loops there. I find it easy if I leave a little tail. That way when it pulls through, I don't struggle too much. And then I'm just going back in one of these loops, just for extra security. And now I'm going to take this little tail and tie them together for extra security, so this one doesn't come out. Not too snug. We don't want the too tightly the beak end. So here we go, a few times. And now I'm just going to push this yarn into the beak. There we go. Now, we've got the stitch marker. Let's keep going. So for the new row, careful how you cinch so it doesn't snap, very gently. For the next row, we've got 2 single crochet and an increase. So we did 1. And there's 2, and the next one is an increase, 2 in the next, 2 single crochets, and 2 and 1, 2 single crochets, 2 and 1, 2 single crochets, and 2 and 1, and we should have 16. Let's make sure. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Perfect. Okay. Insert the hook and just secure your first stitch. See, I grabbed the very first loop. And now we're going to do, again, a repeat row of 2 single crochets and increase. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. And then we have 1 stitch left. We're just going to work that stitch. And we should have 21 in this row. Now for row 7, secure my first stitch. We're going to have just 21 regular single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 21. Sorry about the counting like that. That's how I count. So we're going to start the next row is decrease row. Securing that very first stitch. My stitch marker, and the yarn will start to twist a little bit. So let's do that. So we've got 2 single crochets and a decrease. That's 1. Already worked. Number 2. And decreasing, we're doing the invisible decrease, which is picking the very first loop as though you're working front loops only. So we're going to pull up right between the stitches and the very first loop, and we're going to just maneuver the hook and twist it and pick up the second stitch front loop. So if you look from the inside, there's 2 loops. Well, you can't really see it very good, but it's 2 loops are back there. And now yarn over and pull through both loops. It's gonna be a little bit hard the very first time, but once you kind of feel it, you get the hang of it. Now I've got 2 loops, yarn over and pull through those 2. And that is a decrease. That's an invisible decrease. And if you turn it over, you can somewhat see the back loops. There's one, and there's the second one. And that's one way you can tell where you've decreased, because there'll be those 2 loops where everything else doesn't have loops sticking out. So that's our first decrease. 2 single crochets, another decrease, first loop, second loop, pull through both, 2 loops, and pull through 2. If that's too hard, just standard decrease. That's 2 single crochets. And now let's do a standard decrease. Push through both loops, pull up a yarn, hold on to that, and the next stitch, pull up a yarn, and that's 3 loops on the hook, And that's a standard decrease. Pull through all 3 loops. I'm going to undo that. I prefer the first loops, and you could pull on a little bit and stretch it out so you can bring the yarn through there easier. 2 single crochets, another decrease, two single crochets, another decrease, and we have 1 stitch left. We're just going to single crochet that stitch. It's going to happen a lot. And now I'm going to remove the stitch marker, bring my hook in there, bring up a loop. I like to start my rows like that unless I know I'm decreasing right away. Now we're going to decrease every other stitch. So that's 1 single crochet, then a decrease, 1 single crochet, and 1 decrease, 1 single crochet, 1 decrease, 1 single crochet, decrease, decrease, 1 single crochet, and decrease, 1 single crochet, and decrease. And usually you end on a decrease, so I have 1 more single crochet. I'm just gonna work that out. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention all the stitches for each row. You should have 11 stitches after this decrease. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. That's the 9th row, so let's count. That's the very first row, is the tip. Then there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That was the 9th row. We will decrease again. One single crochet, decrease the next row the same. And then we're going to bring it down to 8 stitches. So 1 single crochet, 1 decrease, 1 single crochet, 1 decrease. It's going to get a little tough decreasing here. The stitches are a little more snug. 1 single crochet, 1 decrease. You should have 8 here at the end. 1 single crochet, and after that 1 single crochet I have an extra stitch, so I'm just working. I can't decrease there, so I'm just working 1 extra stitch. Make sure we have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is the last one with the stitch marker. This is the head. I'm going to decrease 1 more time. This row, number 11, is going to be 2 single crochets and decrease. And then I will be changing colors for the neck. So that's the first single crochet. And second, that's 2. Decrease. You could leave the neck a little thicker if you like. If it's getting a bit too hard to decrease. 1, 2, and decrease in the last 2. And should be 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am not going to finish the last decrease because I'm going to change colors. So I left 2 loops on the hook, and I'm going to pull the yarn from inside, and pretty snug. Don't want to pull too hard. And I'm going to work the last stitch, finish it, and now move the stitch marker. And the next row we're going to do 2 single crochets. Let's secure that stitch marker in the first one, and we're gonna increase. That's 2, and increase in the next 1, 2, and 1, 2 single crochets, and 2 single crochets and 1 for that increase. We brought it back to 8 single crochets. So I will keep the yarn because I will do the neck in purple and continue the body in this color. I'd like to use up all this yarn if I can. So we're gonna leave that there, pull it in tight, and let's start on the next row. And the stitch marker, secure the first stitch. We have 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we're going to do just 8 single crochets for row 13. Forgive me that I forgot to mention the other rows. So we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So 12 rows, and the row 13 is just 8 single crochets. We've got 1 already done. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're going to decrease down to 5 single crochets to get this little bump on the neck. So the very first stitch is 1 single crochet, and the next is a decrease, one single crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3 stitches. Next is decrease. That's 4. So because we need 5, we're going to decrease 2 in a row. So we decreased once, and instead of doing 1 single crochet decrease, we're just going to decrease one more time. And now we have 5. And the next row, it's just going to be 5 single crochets. There goes 1. 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's a little bit tricky now. You gotta find that stitch and make sure you don't go through both sides of the neck. Now we're going to do 5 single crochets, 4 rows. What I normally do here is I move the stitch to the bottom part of the last row and just find a little loop so I can secure it, and I can just work in the round faster rather than moving the stitch all the time. That way I know that was my very first row. So, or you can just count 20, which we already did 5. That's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 2 rows of 5. And we're starting row 3. That's 11, 12. If it's too much having this yarn tail, just cut it and secure it and then reattach if that's easier for you. I got used to it, so. And that's 15, and we've got 1, 2, 3 rows, so we need 1 more. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's row 18. And now I'm going to secure 1 single crochet in the next one. Let's make sure it lines up. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and I've got the very first stitch up here, so I'm gonna secure that stitch marker so I don't lose it. And I just want to make sure that we're on 18 rows. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Perfect. Starting row 19. So we're doing 1 single crochet and increase so we can get up to 7 single crochets. So we've got, I already did 1 and now increase. And 1, increase, and we just have 1 left, so we're just going to work that single crochet stitch. Then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is the last one. Now I'm going to change colors. Pull out that loop. I've got those 2. And now I'm going to tug on this yarn just a little bit, make sure it's nice and snug, and finish that stitch. Now I've got row 20 is 2 single crochets and increase. Let's work the first stitch. Move the stitch marker. And that's 2 single crochets. Oops. 1 and 2. And now that's an increase. And 2 single crochets. 1, 2. And 2 and 1 increase. 1, 2. And I've got 1 stitch left. We're just going to work that stitch. You should have 9. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Perfect. I'm going to cut the yarn because the body will be completely in this yarn. So what I'm going to do, since we're done here, I'm going to pull the yarn through because I don't have anything to tie it with. I'm going to pull it out like this. I'm going to cut the yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail, and it's helpful if you just pinch the ends and remove the little fuzz, otherwise you'll deal with that later when you're working it. So I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to leave it out on this side so that later I can tie it to another end. I'll show you when that comes to that. Now we are at 9. And we're going to increase in every stitch now. So this very first stitch, I'm going to work 1 single crochet and move the stitch marker. And when you reinsert the hook, there's a little tip. If you don't know where to insert your hook, the correct way to find is if I'm tugging at this yarn tail, this one moves. This loop moves, which means that's in the very front. So I'd be inserting the hook this way. If I insert this way, it'll be twisted. It shouldn't harm your work, but it's better to be correct. So the yarn that moves is the one that sits in the very front. So we've got increase in every stitch. Since we're adding the definition, we're starting the body. I've got 2 in each. 1, 2. 2 in this one. Increase again. Keep increasing. Bringing the count to 18 at the end of this row. Okay, let's make sure. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8. Perfect. Now we're going to increase every third stitch, so 2 single crochet and increase again. Let's secure the first stitch. 1, 2, increase 2 and 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, and 2. That's kind of how I like to remember. Then I know, oh, I did 2, and then I do 1 and 2 and 2 and 1. Oh, I'm losing my stitch marker. That was 2 and 1. And then 1 and 2. And the last one is an increase. Should be 24 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20, and 2, 4, 24. Perfect. Now we've got 2 rows of 24. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker. And there we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another row 24. Just finishing this round of 24. Now we're going to do 3 single crochets, securing the first stitch, and then an increase. 1, 2, 3, and 2. 1, 2, 3, and 2. 1, 2, 3, and 2. Let's finish that row. And we're finishing with an increase. Then we're going to decrease in the next row. So we are doing 3 single crochets and decrease on top of the last increase. So we go 1, 2, 3. And if you can see the 2 in the last stitch where we increased, we just decreased the top of that. If that's easier for you, finding the last row or counting 2, 3, decrease, 2, 3, decrease. And end with a decrease. Then the next row is going to be a decrease row again. 2 single crochet and decrease. That's 1, 2, decrease. And 1, 2, decrease. And for the last row, we're supposed to have 24 left. Sorry, I forgot to mention. And now after this row, we should have 18. 2 and decrease. And 1 and 2. and decrease, 1, 2, and decrease, oops, 1, 2, and the last is a decrease. All right, we should have 18 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 16, 18. Perfect. Every now and then it's good to check. Then we're going to do 3 single crochet, decrease. Secure that first one. 1, 2, 3, and decrease. 1, 2, 3, decrease. 1, 2, 3, decrease. 2, 3, and it ends on the 3 single crochets, and there's no room to decrease again, so we just finish with that. That should bring it down to 15. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15. Perfect. And now we're going to increase for the other part of the body, the bottom. And we're going to increase in each stitch. That's the first single crochet in the first stitch. And we need 1 more for that increase. And 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Kind of like a dance. 1, 2. We're going to increase to 30 stitches. Those 15 times 2 basically. Make sure you have 30 after this. So the next row we've got to do 30 single crochets. And that's how many we had left from last row. So single crochet all around. I'm going to count out loud real quick. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30. All right, now we're going to do 4 single crochets, increase. So that's 1 out of 4, 2, 3, 4. Then we've got an increase, 2 and 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 2. Perfect. This row should bring you to 36. We're going to do 36 single crochets for 3 rows. Row 32, 33, and 34. I'll pause the video and I will be back in 3 rows. So I have crocheted 3 rows of 36 single crochet. Starting row 35, it's going to be 3 single crochet, decrease down to 29. I've got my first stitch, and 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, And it looks like past the decrease there's one more stitch. We're just gonna work that in. It's gonna leave us with 29, and we're going to repeat the row, 3 single crochet decrease once again, decreasing the last and the first stitch. So here we go, 1 2 3. So when we come to the end here, I just did 3 single crochets, and I don't have another decrease, but we should. So I'm going to decrease the last and the first stitch together, which will make this stitch the first stitch for the next row. So I'm going to put a stitch marker in it. And now we've got 23 stitches left. We need to keep decreasing. We're going to start with 2 single crochets and decrease. 1 2 and decrease. 1 2 and decrease. Before we go on any further, I'm going to stuff while I still have a big enough hole. So you can use for stuffing, if you don't have polyfill, you can use yarn ends, scrap yarn that you don't want to use. I'm not going to push it into the neck, just kind of at the edge. And you can also use like cloth, old socks, some kind of like any kind of like scrap material you've got. It won't be as soft, but it could be stuffing. So when I finish stuffing this, and I'll be back. So it's so important to feel the shape, and as you feel, maybe in some parts it's too hard, maybe there's too much stuffing, and in some parts it might be empty, which is not enough. And then as you stuff, you're shaping also the shape that you want to see, because if you're just stuff, it'll be kind of warped. Insert wherever you see fit, just about anywhere that it works for you. So there's a little gap here, I feel it, and I want to make sure, so I just kind of, what I'm doing is I'm spreading and pushing and twisting just to make the polyfill bend to my will per se. So I'm not going to stuff anymore, otherwise I'll start to crochet into that filling. And I believe I ended on a decrease, so let's check. There's my back loops right there. So I just decreased, and now I've got 2 single crochet. Let's finish decreasing and decrease, and should have done it at the beginning of the row, sorry about that. 2 and decrease, and it looks like we're not ending on a decrease like standard, but instead just 2 single crochets. So we'll just crochet those, and we should have 14. So let's see, 2 4 6 8 10 12 14 16 I'm so sorry, 18. There's another row of 2 single crochet decrease, and then it'll be 14. So I got 1, 2, and decrease. So that's the second row, 2 single crochet decrease, which is row 38. 1 2 decrease, 1 2 decrease, two, decrease, and we're left with 2 stitches. We'll just work those. It's a good time to add some more stuffing. Alright, added some more stuffing. Make sure that the firmness matches all throughout. The next row we're going to decrease in each one. So we'll start with a decrease, and then we're going to fasten off. So decrease 1, which is row 39, 2, decrease number 3, decrease number 4, number 5, decrease number 6. Usually I like to finish with about 6 stitches, maybe even 7. So we're going to decrease one more time, and that's small enough. So what I do is I check by kind of pinching it, and if it's close enough, about 6, 7 stitches, that'll work for me. If I decrease one more time, then it'll be sticking out like that, so we don't want that. And I am missing a little bit of filling back here, so I'm going to add just a smidge more. Don't want to overfill it, but don't want to underfill it either. Find a happy medium. Should be pretty good. And yes, my filling turned green at one point because I'm using 2 different kinds. So what I like to do is I kind of push them together and see if the crease is nice and defined. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. I don't think I will need a tail. Sometimes I keep a little bit long tail, but not this time. I will use a different color for the tail. The little tail from that. So we don't need this one. Let's sew it shut. So I'm going to pull the string through a darned needle. Darn just means bent like this, for it's a little bit easier to work with. So we're going to pull the front loops of these last stitches, and they should be kind of sticking up already because it's curving in. I like to pull even this one whenever I'm working with chenille yarn, which normally you kind of don't do that, but it doesn't matter. It will cinch. So I'm doing about 3, and then I'm tugging on it very gently because it won't cinch very easy. And then let's do a couple more. I'm also kind of tugging as I go, and now I'm going to close it. Oops, got some. Then I'm going to, until I get to this little bump here. That's my last stitch. So I've got 2, and the very last one, and I'm trying to get that one loop. And now hold with your thumb, very gently tug so you don't break it, and we're gonna insert the hook right through that center and try to come out somewhere on the side between stitches, and pull this very gently and secure the ends as flat as you want. It's looking pretty good to me. And now I'm just going to stick it back in the same place and grab some polyfill and bring the yarn through. And I feel that that's secure enough for me. So I'm going to just push it in. There we go. Now this is where I determine where the face is going to be, if the beak is pointed the way I want it. Probably this the bottom. And then that is how I'm going to determine where the wings go and where the tail goes and where the feet go. So the body is ready. I'm leaving this tail. And now we're going to do the tail next. I'm going to do the tail in this green. That will also be the wings. So, grabbing the tail, we're going to start magic circle again. Yarning over, making an X, inserting the hook, pulling up a loop, and doing a chain 1, securing that circle. I'm going to tug on this tail and cinch it a little bit closed. And now we're going to do 4 single crochets. Pull through 1, 2, 3. I'm going to try to cinch the circle. Right, and 4. And now I'm going to increase in each stitch. That's the first one. Put a stitch marker in there if it's helpful to you. And one more in the same stitch. Find the next stitch, increase in that one too. 1, 2. Increase in the next. And the last stitch. That should be 8 total now. The next one is 1 single crochet increase. So the first stitch, 1 single crochet, increase in the next stitch, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is where I tug on the tail a little bit more, cinch it shut, and I'm going to just weave it in through a couple stitches before I finish here, just to secure it. I found it that I did not do this in my very first one, and the tail came undone at the very tip of it. Just gonna grab some stitching. Just as long as it's a few stitches, it should be pretty secure. Maybe pull through here. Alright, that's good enough. Okay, push that in there. And I hold it with my fingers. Now that we have 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, yep. Now we're going to do 2 single crochets and increase. So it goes 1, 2, and increase, 2 and 1, 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and last one is an increase, and we should have 16. 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Perfect. And now we're gonna do a decrease row, 2 single crochet and decrease. 1, 2, decrease, and 1, 2, and decrease, and we finish with a decrease. And now the tail is going to be a little pointy on one side and a little curvy on another. And this is where I add 3 extra stitches just to bring it to the back, because I like to sew it on with a pointy up, kind of like you see here. And that's the curvy side. You could kind of pinch it, but it'll still be curvier on one side. So basically bring 3 stitches to the back. So take the stitch marker. So I've got 1 and 2 and 3, and technically I do a slip stitch either on the 3rd or the 4th, doesn't matter at that point. Now we do need a little bit of a tail for the tail. So I'm counting that I need to sew it on every stitch, so I kind of like wrap around it a few times, maybe 3 times around the work, and I think that's a long enough tail. So, and this actually might be a little too long, but it's better to overcompensate. Pull this through that slip stitch. This is why I leave little tails like this, because sometimes when I don't have enough, I pull the other tail and I sew the rest with it. Better than attaching on. So we get the tail. Now I'm going to do the legs, the foot with green, and the leg with purple, like the neck, to match it a bit. So we're going to do 6 single crochets, the magic circle again. So cut the yarn, wrap around, little X, 1 chain, single crochet, secure that circle, cinch it a little bit shut, just so it's easier later, and do 6 total single crochets. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Cinch it as shut as you can without snapping the yarn. We're going to connect them with a single crochet. And for amigurumi, you're working around all the time, so that's why we don't do slip stitch and chains and whatnot. Cinch that. And now we're gonna increase in each. That was 1, 2 in the first stitch, 2 in the next, and bring it to 12 stitches for the next row. Oops, I keep missing the first loop. There you go. 1, 2, 2, 2, and the last two. Cinch that circle. Then it's going to be a row of just 12 single crochets. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Before I go on, I'm going to secure this circle, cinch it shut, and weave in this tail a little bit. Starting next row is 3 single crochet increase. I've got 1 already, so we've got 2, 3, and 2 and 1 for the increase. 1, 2, 3, and 2. 1, 2, 3, and 2. And the next row we're doing the opposite, 3 single crochet and decrease on top of the other increase from the other row. So that's 2, 3, and this is the increase from the last row, and we're just decreasing on top of that. 2 loops and pull through. 1, 2, 3, and decrease. So we should have had 15 at the last row, and now we're gonna have back to 12. Sorry about that, I forget to say. So now we should have 12. Let's count. 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6. Perfect. 12, we're going to go back down to 6. So that's number 2 decrease, 3 decrease, 4 decrease, 5, 5, and 6. Now we have 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The last one, I'm going to change colors. So reinsert the hook. I forgot about that. And I'm going to add this sugar plum color. And there's going to be 6 single crochets for the next 10 rows. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna crochet on top of this one just to secure that, and then I'm going to cut the yarn, the green. I'm gonna pull it tight, pull this one tight. I'm going to cut them in the same size, and I want to tie them together to secure them. Not too tight to pull the work in, or warp it. About 3 times is a good number. Alright, hold that in there. So now I'm just gonna crochet in the round. Now that I change colors, I'll see my very first row, so it'll be easy to count. But you could use a stitch marker or secure like this bottom loop right here, and then you'll know that's your first row, and so on. So we are doing this for 10 rows in the round. I'll do a few and then speed it up probably. So I am at the 10th row. So I have, this is the beginning, which is lower than the other row. So I can safely count from here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 rows. If I just spin it enough, I could count here 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Now I want to make sure that I end on this top of the stitch. So I'm going to kind of trace back up to the top. And I am 1 over, so 2 over, excuse me. So basically I want to end in a slip stitch right where it begins, otherwise it'll look a little wonky. So now we don't need too much of a tail here. It's a small sewing, so I don't know, maybe about 7 inches, 8 maybe, the most 6, and that's good enough. It's a little tricky sometimes pulling this out, so I don't use the hook always, not to snap the yarn. So if you want, pause here for the next foot, and I'll just give you instructions and I'll crochet off camera. We start with 6 single crochet. The next row is increase in each one, there'll be 12 single crochet, 12, 3 single crochet increase, 3 single crochet decrease, the next row decrease in each, and 10 rows of 6 single crochet. So I have 2 feet now. They look pretty good and same. What I like to start with, wings are last. What I like to start with is finding, if you already didn't add the face, is where you want the face to be. I'm looking for the last stitch where I changed colors. Might not really matter. Okay, I like the way this looks, so I'm going to make sure that I line up the tail with the top of the head as much as I can. So I'm looking to add the tail right about here somewhere. So I'm going to add a little bit of a needle back there. Either that or I could basically point to the same area. And where I placed it was about, so that's the center. So we'll count that as a 1, 2, 3, 4th row in between about 2 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. I sew here, which means I need to move my stitch marker up here. I need 2 rows. I'll be sewing in this crease, over 2 rows in the bottom crease. And if that's my center, so my goose is kind of leaning over. So because he's leaning over, I might have to move the stitch marker a little bit over here. There. I didn't notice that earlier. There we go. So we're gonna tail down where we sewed the last one. That's gonna be down to the bottom. And I'm going to secure the top stitch, into this area where I want to sew it, like that. Let's remove this, and now I'm going to start. Remember, it's 2 rows, so I'm going to start sewing at the bottom here. Let's get the needle threaded. The way I find it the easiest is after you manipulate and figure out where you want to go, the rest is easy. So I'm going to keep it as center as I can, 2 rows. I'm going to insert the hook this way because I'm picking up a stitch. And I'm going to just bring this down. And now I'm going to push it over and bring up the stitching and grab the next stitch next to this one. I'm going to bring my needle through that and pull it down, and in the same area I came out of, I'm going to reinsert my needle there and pull up another stitch, 1 over, since we're going this way, and pull it down. I'm going to scoop and grab another couple of these stitches, pull a nice and snug, back in the same stitch, and 1 more. Now because the tail ends here, I'm not going to continue. This will be the last time, so I'm going to pull it through, and now I'm going to turn it this way. So I want to get a couple of stitches in these 2 rows before I continue in the second crease. So I'm going to grab 1 stitch, go back in the same place I just came out of, and move 1 stitch over into the next row. Pull up another loop, the next one, so I'm going loop, 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 stitches, stitches, loops, and now I'm going to go back into it, and I'm going to go in an angle since it's not a perfect square. So I'm going to go in the last crease where my stitch marker is holding a spot, but at an angle, so I don't continue going up this way as the tail curves a little. So let me show you what I mean. So now, see how it kind of curves in? You want to make sure we don't pull it out too tight. And now I'm going to grab another stitch and secure it in the same place I just came out of. 1 stitch over. Now I can remove my stitch marker and pull it tight and continue the next stitch, pull it tight, back in the same place, pull up the next stitch, and scooping from in out, pull it down in the same place, 1 over. We're doing about 4. So I want to match it because this was in the middle, so I'm going to go a little bit more. I don't want to go too far over, it'll be crooked. So I'm going to do 1 more over. Just keep checking. So I think I'm going to start to go down here now, because if I keep going out, it'll be too far. So I think that's far enough. Grab the next stitch, go back where I just pulled out, and then go in this way, down, and now pull up another stitch, go back where I just came from, and go 1 more row down. Pull up another stitch. You can pull the same stitch twice if it needs to be. And now I've got basically 2 more stitches. And so I'm going to Now I've got one more stitch, and I'm just going to secure it back in here, and I'm gonna pull the loop through over and just gonna check my work. So it's pretty straight for the most part, and then I like how it curves. Tail looks good to me. It's a little bit crooked, but I don't mind it. But for the most part, it looks pretty good to me. What I want to do is, there's a little loop here. That's like the very first stitch. I like to secure it. So I'm just going to go back in. Go right above it. And then basically scoop it in between the yarn and pull it in there. So it's gone now. Okay, I did cut the tail too long a bit, so I'm gonna keep it since I might need it later to secure either this one or the wings. So now what I like to do is, now that I have the head and the tail straight, I like to find where I add the legs. And the best way is to have stitch markers. So from the center here, we're going to count 3 rows down, it looks like. And this is going to be about 1 row, deep. You could do 2 rows if you wanted to, but I think, yeah, this one I did 2 rows, so it stands a little thicker looking. Well, we'll see. Okay, so I've got the tail, and I'm going to secure the first leg. So I'm going to count from the middle, 3 rows down. I'm going to put a stitch marker here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces. So what I want to see is, you can go from the back, is to get it as centered like an A as possible. So I guess, I think this one is a little bit too far down, so I'd probably just move this one 1 stitch over. See what I mean? And that's good with me. So just imagine the feet there. That's all. Okay, that's good with me. I'm going to thread the yarn. If I want the leg to go like this, basically let's position it on top of that stitch marker. And the same concept, I'm going to scoop 1 loop, 1 stitch. Let's make sure, yeah, that's right under the stitch. So I'm going to secure that by pulling up one of these loops, securing it tight. And let's do about 2 stitches over, because it's got 6, so we're going to do 2 on the side, going back in the same hole, up this way, grab this one here, and Move the stitch over, grab another one more over, one here, again, and go down, kind of like a little square. And then it looks like maybe I could grab one more stitch just to secure it. And I'm going to go back in there and pull it through somewhere. And now we've got this sewn. So you can see about 2 stitches. I did 1 row down, and I did 2 stitches down here and 1 across the top, and I like the way that looks. All right, getting the second leg going. Same concept. I'm going to begin underneath the stitch, making sure it's the same row. Put the leg over that stitch, pulling up one of these loops. Perfect, right under it. Skip one of these, pull it tight. Stitch over. I'm going to remove the stitch marker. I'm going to go up, grab a stitch, back in the same place and across, making sure that's the same row. And cinch it, not cinch it, pull it tight. One more, pull up the next one. Make sure I don't miss a stitch, but if you do, that's okay. You can always go back again. Like if I were to miss a stitch somewhere here, I can just go back and sew it. So don't fret, you don't have to undo the work. And now that looks like it's the last stitch, so I'm going to just pull the tail out, check the work before I cut it. So it's the same row. I've got, tug on a bit and see if you get all the stitches. I did. Okay, check in the position. So it is a little bit off to the side here, but I'm content with it. It's not that noticeable. Okay, so now I'm going to bring these 2 tails together. Oops. I'm going to bring them right here in the same stitch, and I'm going to pull on them a little bit to make them tight and tie them together a couple of times. Let's do 3 times. And then I'm going to bring one of these tails and see if I can reach the other one. I picked the longer out of the 2, but they're pretty same. So now I'm gonna see if I can bring it through all the way to this one. How I secure them. Let's bring this one. And bring them together, pull on this neck a bit, and sew them up, or tie them, sorry. Tie them up a few times and push it in with the back of your needle. Usually is good. I have a hook, the back of a metal hook I use sometimes that I designated. So just to show you, I use just the back of the hook. Just the hook I don't use anymore. And it pushes it in a little bit quicker and easier. And sometimes I insert it further away and I just scoop to make sure that it never comes back out. All we have to do is the wings. Now, what I do before I start the wings, we're crocheting them on. So you're done with the sewing, except for the embroidery of the eyes. Now, the wings consist of 4 single crochets. And what I do is I find the center at the very top. We can put them maybe 2 stitches apart, or I've got this one that's about 4 stitches apart. So it's up to you, really. I think I'll do 4 stitches. I like the way this one is, but I like 4 stitches better. So what I'm going to do, find that tail, and so we'll do 3 rows down from the neck, the skinniest part of the neck. So 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go on the side of the tail, so perhaps right here. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5 stitches. Let's go one more up. Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4-ish. And let's see here. And then I kind of look at the legs, make sure I like the position. I think I'm content with that. So I will begin crocheting it on 4 stitches down. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So I'm going to basically crochet across one of these rows. See? Right through. 4 stitches. Okay. So I'm going to get my yarn. I'm going to use this green one. And I'm going to count just about 4 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to scoop a stitch, just checking if I like that. That's good for me. I'm going to put the yarn on the hook like this. Leave a little tail. And I'm going to pull it out. And then the working yarn, I'll leave that one on the side. Then I'm going to secure the working line and make 1 chain. Then I'm going to tighten it here. You can do as tight as you want, because we're going to do another single crochet. So I'm going to go in the same spot and come out the same area and pull up another loop. And that's my official single crochet. See? And then I'm going to do it again in the next chain. Or not the next chain, but next space. That's 2. So I'll show you. Basically, I'm right here. And this is the next little space. So I'll insert here. And then I'll do the last one where I have here. So you're working in between these stitches. That's number 3 and number 4. This is where the stitch marker is. So I remove the stitch marker now, and I've got 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use the stitch marker to secure this very first one, so you can always find it, because sometimes it's a little hard to find. So we've got 4 single crochets. We're going to chain 1 and turn to work back down this row, and we're going to do a single crochet in. So this is the chain 1. We don't work there, we work at the bottom here where the 4th stitch is. We're going to do 1 single crochet, then in the next 2 we're going to increase. That's 2 single crochet in each one of those. So that's 2 and 1 and 2, and this very last stitch is just 1 single crochet in there, and now chain 1 again and turn this other side. If this is too hard for you, you can crochet the wings separately. What you do is start with chain 5, then work into the chain 4 times. That establishes your 4 single crochets, and you just do the same thing that I'm doing now. After single crochet 2 increases single crochet, it's 6 stitches. So we're just gonna work 6 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Oops. Sometimes when it feels loose, most likely you just grabbed one of the stitches, not both. Chain 1 and turn again. And now we're going to do 2 single crochets. 1, 2, and 1 increase, basically in the middle of the wing. Increase 1 time. That's 2 and 1. And then you should have 3 single crochets left. So just single crochet 3 and chain 1 and turn the wing. Then to decrease, when you're working on a flat part of a amigurumi, you usually just skip a stitch and work into the next instead of crocheting invisible or the other one. That's it's very easy to do, and that's kind of what you do. So decrease 1, which means normally we work this one and we skip it and we work in the second one, and that gives us 1 single crochet right above it. Now this single crochet will be a little hard to catch because of how we did it, so put a stitch marker through there so you can find it. And then we're going to do 3 single crochets in the middle. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to skip the next one and single crochet in the very end, which is another decrease. Chain 1 and turn. Then it should have 5 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the very last one is 5, where that stitch marker is. Chain 1 and turn. We're going to decrease the first one, skip, and the second one single crochet. That's our first decrease. Then 1 single crochet and skip the next one and work a single crochet in the very end. Chain 1 and turn. Decrease again, 1, skip 1, single crochet, and then all we have is just 1 stitch left, so we just single crochet that stitch. So it's decrease and single crochet 1, and then chain 1 and skip the first one and slip stitch in the second one, just to leave a little tip for the wing. So pull through and don't pull up a loop. but pull it right through that second loop, and that leaves you with one loop. Leave it a little bit longer, and so we can tie it to the other end and sew it together. Okay, pull out the yarn, and we will use a needle to sew it through and bring it back down. Let's do the other wing first. Now for this one, I'm going to start in the middle on this side of the stitch. So right above here, and I'm just checking if I like how straight that is, and I do. Make sure that it's working in the same rows, and that'll be my first single crochet. I can remove the stitch. I'll use the same color. Pull it through. Sorry, it's getting a little hard. And I'm going to chain one to secure it. Pull this little tail tight. And then I'm going to insert the hook in the same spot, pull up another loop, and make my first single crochet. Then I'm going to find the second one, pull up a loop, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. And now chain one and turn, single crochet the first one, and increase in the next 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and single crochet in the last, chain one, turn, 6 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the last one is 6. Chain one, turn, 2 single crochets, 1, 2, increase in the middle of the wing, 2 and 1, and 3 single crochets to finish, 3, and chain one, and turn. Now we're gonna skip the first one and single crochet in the second one. That's first decrease, single crochet 3, 1, 2, 3, and decrease one more time, skip and single crochet, chain one, turn. Should be 5 single crochets. We'll crochet them, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets. Oops, gotta grab those 2 stitches. Sometimes you might have to turn and just find it. That's 5. Chain one and turn, and decrease again, skip 1 single crochet, 1 decrease, 1 single crochet, and another decrease, and chain 1 and turn, decrease 1, so we decrease to 1 single crochet in 1, chain 1 and turn, and skip the first one and slip stitch in the second one, basically decrease with the slip stitch. And that's the last wing. Leave it a little bit longer than the wing itself, and pull through. I pull it and cinch it, and now I'm gonna take the darn needle And I'm going to just kind of weave it through so it doesn't show as much as possible, picking up every stitch. If you leave the tail close to the eye of the needle, it's a little bit more helpful when you're working. And then I like to tug on it to keep it from pulling it and curving the wing. Just pulling up stitches as you go, like this. So it can be like as invisible as possible, the thread. And I'm going to bring it all the way down back into the body and pull it out on the side. Now I like to again pull the wing out, make sure that it's comfortable, and I'm going to bring this tail across in towards this one just to unite them. Okay, pulling in and tie them together. A few times. And just gonna push it in. And the swing is ready. I'm going to do the same to this one off camera. So I finished the second wing. And it looks centered to me. I like the way that looks. Into the legs. Looks pretty good. I wanted to just show you how I work if I have one tail left. So I could have secured it to one of the smaller tails, but just in case you have the same dilemma, what I like to do is go in between behind the stitches. So pull up a stitch and kind of wiggle your way through and weave it between, but like without bringing it to the surface. So it feels pretty good. And then I'm going to pull it out, and that's nice and tight. And then I grab the polyfill and I bring it through on another side. Make sure that you fluff up by just pulling the stitches up so it doesn't change the shape of your goose. And then I'll do that maybe one more time. And that's pretty secure for me. Now I just push it back in, since it's perfectly fine to be stuffing. I wouldn't cut it off and stuff it somewhere else. Why not? So then that's the end of that. And then I just manipulate the goose to look where I need it to look. What you can do is add accessories. I added a flower here. One of my gooses has a backpack. And the wings was the other one that I was going to do. Now, if you want to add the fur, now is a good time. So what I do is I thread the fur through the needle. I don't cut the fur. Just leave a little bit of a tail here. And I start at the base here and just grab the bottom stitch, and I'll leave a little just enough to kind of go around the wing. And now I'm just going to kind of go in this motion every stitch, or just about every stitch. You can space it out if you want. Just gonna go around the whole thing. And it doesn't look like much right now, but trust me. So back down here. Okay, and now the idea is you come through and you just pull up the little fur part. If you do it with your hand, it'll break. So start painting. Takes a little bit of patience. Okay, so just take the fur. Just it up. It just takes a little bit of time, but if you wanted feathers, that is definitely one way to do it. I think I'm going to skip out on the feathers, but I wanted you to kind of see how that goes. I'm going to embroider the eyes now. So I get some violet embroidery floss. And I'm going to make the little sleepy eyes. I think maybe about right here. So we have to enter from further back somewhere. And let's see here. Leave a little tail. I think I'm going to do about two stitches in space. I'm gonna bring it out real quick and see how that looks. Like that. And I'm going to come back and add the eyelashes. So I'm gonna go in between, not all the way up here, but in between the stitches, and come back through and in another place, and then pull it all the way to the other side and repeat. Similarly, it didn't work out too good. Kind of like a winged I think I'll come out a couple of stitches over here and bring it through, kind of like this. I think that's good enough for me, especially because it's going to a baby. And bring it out here. Make sure I don't sew the head. Okay. And I'm just gonna tie these two ends not too tight. So it doesn't pull. Well, that got buried. There we go. And tie a few times, and then push it in. You can add nostrils if you like. I won't. I don't feel the need. But all you have to do is basically add a couple of little stitches. I think this goose is ready. I really like how it turned out with the colors. So I hope you had fun crocheting along with me. I will not be adding any accessories to this particular goose, but if you had any trouble, please let me know and I will fix the pattern. There you go. Thanks guys for taking the time and crocheting this goose with me. It was my pleasure to share this pattern with you for free. Feel free to make as many as you like, gift them, sell them, and be happy. Wishing everyone all the best. Love to all of you. See you in the next one. Bye.